Chief Emeka Okafor stood at the window of his penthouse office, looking down at the city below. At 72 years old, he was one of the richest men in the country. He owned hotels, banks, real estate, oil wells. His wealth was so vast he'd stopped counting years ago. But as he watched the people moving like ants on the streets below, a question haunted him. Does anyone love me for who I am? Or do they only love my money? His doctor had just given him news. 6 months to live, maybe less. Cancer, aggressive and spreading. He could afford the best treatment in the world, but the doctor had been honest. At his age, with this type of cancer, money couldn't buy him much time. He had to make a decision. How would he spend his final months? That evening, Chief Emeka called a meeting with his family. His 3 children arrived at the mansion in their expensive cars. Chike, his eldest son, was 45. He managed one of the family hotels and drove a Range Rover. Ngozi, his only daughter, was 42. She lived in London and flew in on her private jet. Obiora, his youngest at 38, was the CEO of the family's oil company and never went anywhere without his bodyguards. They gathered in the grand living room, sitting on furniture that cost more than most people's houses. Chief Emeka looked at them, these children he'd raised, given everything to. "What do you see when you look at me?" he asked. They exchanged confused glances. "Papa, are you feeling well?" Chike asked. "Just answer the question." Ngozi spoke first, her voice sweet. "We see a strong man, a powerful man, our father who has given us everything." Chike nodded. "A legend, a man who built an empire from nothing." Obiora smiled. "The greatest businessman in the country." Chief Emeka sat back, his face unreadable. "And if I lost everything tomorrow, if I had no money, no houses, no companies, what would you see then?" The room fell silent. The question hung in the air like smoke. "Papa, why would you ask such a thing?" Ngozi asked nervously. "You'll never lose your wealth. You're too smart for that." "Just answer," he pressed. "If I was poor, broken, with nothing to give you, would you still love me?" "Of course, Papa," they all said in unison. But their eyes told a different story. Chief Emeka saw it, the flash of fear, the quick calculation. He smiled sadly. "We'll see." That night, Chief Emeka made his plan. He called his most trusted friend, Chief Arenze, who'd known him since they were boys in the village. "I need your help with something," Emeka said. "Something crazy." Arenze listened as Emeka explained his idea. He wanted to fake his own financial collapse, pretend he'd lost everything, then disguise himself as a beggar and see how his family truly treated him when he had nothing to offer. Arenze stared at him. "You finally lost your mind." "Maybe," Emeka admitted, "but I need to know the truth before I die." "What truth?" "Whether anyone in my family loves me for me, or if they only love what I can give them." Arenze sighed deeply. "And what if the answer breaks your heart?" "Then at least I'll die knowing the truth," Emeka said.
The plan was simple but elaborate. Arenze would spread rumors that Chief Emeka had made terrible investments, lost billions, was on the verge of bankruptcy. The banks would be told to freeze his accounts temporarily, making it look real. The staff would be let go. The cars would be repossessed. The companies would be sold to pay debts. All fake, all staged, but the family wouldn't know that. They would believe their father had truly lost everything. Then Chief Emeka would leave the mansion, disappear for a few weeks, and return disguised as a beggar. He would approach his children one by one, asking for help, and he would see their true colors. "It's risky," Arenze warned. "What if they pass your test? What if they welcome you with open arms, even as a beggar?" "Then I'll die a happy man," Emeka said. "But Arenze, I've watched them my whole life. I've seen how they treat poor people, how they look at beggars with disgust. I need to know if I raised them right." Within 2 weeks, the rumors spread like wildfire. Chief Emeka Okafor, the great billionaire, had lost everything. Bad investments, fraud, betrayal by business partners. The newspapers ran headlines. Business titan falls from grace. From billions to broke, the collapse of an empire. His children started receiving calls. Friends asking questions, business associates distancing themselves. Chike called an emergency family meeting. "Papa, what's going on? Are these rumors true?" Chief Emeka sat in his study, looking older and more tired than they'd ever seen him. He nodded slowly. "I made mistakes, bad decisions. The businesses are gone, the properties are being seized. We have nothing." The silence was deafening. Ngozi's face went pale. "What do you mean, nothing?" "Everything," Papa said quietly. "By the end of the month, even this mansion will be gone." The reactions came quickly. Chike was the first to speak, his voice angry. "How could you let this happen? You're supposed to be a genius. You built an empire and you just threw it away?" "I'm sorry, son." Ngozi stood up, her designer handbag clutched tight. "This can't be happening. I have a lifestyle to maintain, friends to impress. Papa, you have to fix this." "I can't fix what's already broken," Emeka said. Obiora paced back and forth. "My friends are already mocking me. Do you know what they're saying? That the Okafor name is finished? That we're a joke? I have a reputation to protect." "Then protect it," Emeka said tiredly. All 3 children stared at him like he was a stranger. That night, they left the mansion without saying goodbye. No hugs, no comfort, just shock and anger and shame. Chief Emeka watched them go from his window. The test had begun. Over the next 2 weeks, Chief Emeka staged his disappearance. The staff were let go with generous severance packages, secretly paid by Arinze. The mansion was sold, the cars repossessed. Chief Emeka moved into a small, dirty room in one of the poorest parts of the city. He stopped shaving, let his hair grow wild, wore torn, filthy clothes, rubbed dirt on his face and hands. When he looked in the cracked mirror, he barely recognized himself. He looked like what he was pretending to be, a broken old man with nothing, a beggar. Arinze visited him once. "This is madness," he said, looking around the tiny room with disgust. "You're a sick man. You should be in a hospital, not this rat hole." "I need to do this," Emeka insisted. "I need to know." Arinze shook his head. "Just remember, my friend, sometimes the truth is worse than the lie."
Chief Emeka's first test was with Chike, his oldest son. He knew Chike would be at his favorite restaurant on Saturday evening. He always went there after golf. Chief Emeka waited outside the expensive establishment, sitting on the ground with a small tin cup. He watched as people walked past him. Some dropped coins without looking. Most ignored him completely. Then Chike arrived in a taxi, not his usual Range Rover. Even in poverty, his son refused to take public transport. Chike walked toward the restaurant entrance, phone pressed to his ear. Chief Emeka called out in a raspy voice he'd practiced. "Please, sir, just small something for food." Chike glanced at him briefly, his face twisted in disgust. "Get away from here. You're making the place dirty. The restaurant management should clear you people away." But Chief Emeka persisted. He grabbed at Chike's expensive shoe. "Please, sir, I'm hungry. I have not eaten in 3 days." Chike kicked his foot away hard. "I said leave me alone. Do you know who I am? I don't beg for money. I earn it. Go and find work instead of sitting here like a useless man." Chief Emeka looked up at his son's face. There was no recognition, no compassion, just contempt. Pure contempt. Chike walked into the restaurant without looking back. Chief Emeka sat there on the cold ground, his heart breaking. This was his firstborn, the son he'd sent to the best schools, given everything to, and Chike couldn't spare a kind word for a hungry old man. That night, Chief Emeka wept in his tiny room. Maybe he had failed as a father. Maybe he had raised his children to be just like him, focused only on wealth and status. The second test was with Ngozi, his daughter. She was staying at one of the city's most expensive hotels. Chief Emeka positioned himself near the entrance, pretending to sweep the sidewalk with an old broom. Ngozi emerged from the hotel in a flowing designer dress, her hair freshly done, her nails perfect. A car was waiting for her. Chief Emeka approached her slowly. "Madame, please, can you help an old man? Just small money for food." Ngozi looked at him like he was an insect. She wrinkled her nose. "Don't touch me. You smell terrible." Her driver moved forward. "Should I handle him, madame?" "Yes," Ngozi said coldly. "Remove him from my sight." The driver grabbed Chief Emeka roughly and pushed him away. Chief Emeka stumbled and fell. Ngozi stepped over him like he was garbage, climbed into her car, and drove away. Chief Emeka lay there on the ground for a moment, his old bones aching. A street sweeper, a woman even poorer than he was pretending to be, helped him up. "Are you okay, Papa?" she asked with genuine concern. "God bless you, my daughter," Chief Emeka said. She shared her lunch with him, half a loaf of bread and some water. They sat together on the curb, two people society had discarded, sharing a meal. The woman told him about her life. 6 children, husband died. She swept streets to feed them. "But they're good children," she said with pride. "They respect me. They help each other. We don't have money, but we have love." Chief Emeka listened and wept. This poor woman had more wealth in her family than he ever had in his own, because she had raised her children with values, not just money. His daughter, with all her wealth, had no kindness in her heart. The second test failed.
The third test was with Obiora, his youngest. Obiora was at a business meeting at a hotel conference center. Chief Emeka waited outside, pretending to be selling small items, a common sight for desperate people. Obiora came out with several businessmen, all of them in expensive suits, laughing and talking loud. Chief Emeka approached them, holding out some small trinkets. "Please, sirs, buy something. I need to eat today." The businessmen ignored him. But Obiora stopped. He looked at the old beggar carefully. Chief Emeka's heart jumped. Did Obiora recognize him? But no. Obiora reached into his pocket and pulled out a bill, a very small one. "Here, old man, take this and leave us alone." He threw the money on the ground. Chief Emeka had to bend down to pick it up. As he did, Obiora and his friends laughed. "Look at him scramble for it," one of them said, "like a dog." Obiora laughed along with them. "That's what happens when you're lazy, when you don't work hard in life. You end up like this, begging for scraps." His friends agreed. "That's why we work hard, so we never end up like these people." They walked away, still laughing. Chief Emeka looked at the small bill in his hand. It wasn't even enough to buy a decent meal. And the way Obiora had thrown it, like he was feeding an animal, not helping a human being. All 3 children had failed the test. Not one of them had shown basic human kindness to a beggar. Not one had seen past the dirty clothes to the human being underneath. Chief Emeka had his answer. His children didn't love him. They loved his money. And without it, he was nothing to them. Just another invisible poor person to step over and mock. Chief Emeka spent the next week living as a beggar, observing the world from the bottom. He saw things he'd never noticed when he was rich. How people treated the poor with disgust. How easily they judged. How quickly they assumed poverty was a moral failing, not a circumstance. But he also saw beautiful things. He saw poor people sharing their last meal with strangers. He saw street children protecting each other. He saw communities coming together to help when one person was in need. The poor, he realized, understood suffering, and that understanding made them kind. The rich, including his own children, had never suffered, So they had no empathy, no compassion. They were empty inside, filled only with money and pride. One night, an old woman brought him soup. "You look sick, Papa," she said. "Please eat." She could barely feed herself, yet she fed him. As Chief Emeka recovered his strength from the old woman's kindness, he made a decision. He had maybe 4 months left to live now. He would spend it differently than he'd planned. He would reveal the truth to his children, show them what they'd become, and then he would change his will. Everything he'd built, he would leave to those who truly needed it, to the poor people who had shown him more kindness in 3 weeks than his own family had in a lifetime. But first, one more test. He would reveal himself to his family and see their reaction. Would they be ashamed, apologetic, or would they only care that his money was back? Arinze arranged for a family meeting. The children were told their father had been found and wanted to see them. They gathered at Arinze's house, confused. "What's going on? Where has Papa been?"
Chief Emeka walked into the room, but he didn't look like himself. He was still dressed in beggar's clothes, dirty and ragged. His children didn't recognize him at first. "Who is this?" Ngozi asked, covering her nose. Then Chief Emeka spoke. "Hello, my children." The room went silent. They stared at him in shock and horror. "Papa?" Chike whispered. "Is that you?" "Yes," Chief Emeka said quietly. "This is me. Without the money. Without the status. Just me." "What happened to you?" Obiora asked, his voice disgusted. "You look like a beggar." "I was a beggar," Chief Emeka said. "For 3 weeks, I lived on the streets. I approached each of you, asking for help, and every single one of you failed me." The children's faces changed from shock to confusion to realization. "That beggar," Chike said slowly. "The one outside the restaurant. That was you." Chief Emeka nodded. "That was me, your father, hungry and desperate, and you kicked me away like a dog." "But Papa, I didn't know it was you," Chike protested. "Exactly," Chief Emeka said, his voice rising. "You didn't know it was me. So you treated him, treated me, with contempt, like I was less than human, because I was poor." Ngozi's face flushed red. "This was a trick? A test?" "Yes," Chief Emeka said, "and you all failed spectacularly." Obiora stood up, angry. "This is ridiculous. You humiliated yourself and us. For what? To prove some point? To teach you what I should have taught you years ago," Chief Emeka said sadly. "That wealth doesn't make you better than others, that poor people are still people, that kindness matters more than money. But I failed. I raised you to worship wealth, and now you're empty inside." The argument that followed was brutal. The children defended themselves, said he'd tricked them, that it wasn't fair, that of course they would have helped if they'd known it was him. "But that's the point," Chief Emeka said. "You should help people because they need help, not because they're related to you. That beggar outside the restaurant was someone's father too. That woman you stepped over was someone's mother, but you didn't care because they had no value to you." The children fell silent. Then Chike spoke, his voice cold. "So what now, Papa? You've proven your point. We're terrible children. We failed your little test. Are you happy?" "No," Chief Emeka said quietly. "I'm heartbroken, but I'm also dying." "What?" All 3 children spoke at once. Chief Emeka told them about the cancer, about the 6 months, now down to 4. "I wanted to know if anyone loved me before I died," he said. "Now I know the answer." The news of his illness changed everything. Suddenly, his children were concerned, emotional, crying. "Papa, you should have told us. We would have been there for you." "Would you?" Chief Emeka asked. "Or would you have been there for my money, making sure you stayed in the will?" The question hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. "Because that's what you're thinking right now, isn't it? Not about losing your father, but about losing your inheritance?"
Ngozi burst into tears. "That's not fair. How do you know that's not what we're thinking? We do love you, Papa." "Do you?" Chief Emeka asked softly. "Because I spent 3 weeks watching how you treat people who have nothing, and it terrified me. You're not kind people. You're not good people. You're what I made you, rich, arrogant, and empty. I'm sorry for that." The children had no response. Deep down, they knew he was right.
Over the next few weeks, Chief Emeka's children tried to prove themselves. They visited him daily, brought him gifts, helped him settle back into a comfortable apartment that Arenze had arranged. They were attentive and caring, but Chief Emeka watched them carefully. He saw how forced it was, how they checked their watches during visits, how they talked about money and inheritance more than memories and love. One day, he decided to test them one final time. He announced he was changing his will. Most of his wealth would go to charity, to build schools for poor children, hospitals for those who couldn't afford care, shelters for the homeless. His children would receive only a small portion, enough to be comfortable, but not wealthy. The reactions were immediate and devastating. "Papa, you can't do this," Chike shouted. "We're your children. We deserve that inheritance." "Do you?" Chief Emeka asked. "What have you done to deserve it except be born? You've never worked for anything, never struggled, never learned the value of money because you've always had it. Maybe struggle will teach you what I couldn't." Ngozi was crying again. "But Papa, what about my lifestyle, my friends, my status?" "What about it?" Chief Emeka asked. "Is that all that matters to you? Status? What people think? Not who you are, but what you have?" Obiora was furious. "This is because of that stupid beggar test. You're punishing us for one mistake." "It wasn't one mistake," Chief Emeka said tiredly. "It was a revelation. You've been making that mistake your whole lives. I just finally saw it clearly." "If you change that will, we'll contest it," Obiora threatened. "We'll fight you in court." "Then fight," Chief Emeka said. "Prove me right about you all over again." The children left angry and bitter. They didn't visit for several days. Chief Emeka sat in his apartment, sick and alone, and wondered if he'd made the right decision. Arenze visited him. "They're scared," Arenze said. "Scared of losing their wealth, scared of becoming ordinary." "Maybe that fear will change them," Chief Emeka said hopefully. "Or maybe it's too late. Maybe I should have done this years ago when they were young, taught them by example instead of giving them everything." Arenze sighed. "You can't change the past, my friend, only the future. And you don't have much future left." "I know," Chief Emeka said. "That's why I need to make this count." A week later, Chike returned, but he came alone, and he came different. "Papa," he said quietly, "can we talk?" Chief Emeka let him in. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Chike spoke. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the beggar test, about how I treated you. I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing your face when I kicked your hand away." "And?" Chief Emeka prompted. "And I'm ashamed," Chike admitted. "I'm ashamed of who I've become, who I've always been." "You were right. I don't see poor people as people. I see them as problems to avoid, as proof that I'm better because I have money. But Papa, that beggar could have been anyone. Could have been you. Could be me someday if I lose everything." He looked at his father with tears in his eyes. "I don't want to be this person anymore." Chief Emeka felt something shift in his chest. This was the first honest thing any of his children had said. "Go on," he said.
Chike continued. "I went back to that restaurant. I found some of the beggars who sit there regularly. I gave them money, real money, and I apologized. I know it doesn't change anything. I know it doesn't make up for years of being terrible. But I'm trying, Papa. I want to be better." Chief Emeka studied his son carefully. "This is not about the inheritance." "I don't care about the inheritance anymore," Chike said. "Give it all away. You're right. We didn't earn it. We don't deserve it. I need to earn my own life, build my own character, Be someone you can be proud of before you die." For the first time in weeks, Chief Emeka smiled. "Then you've already made me proud, son, because that's the first wise thing you've said in 45 years." They embraced, both men crying. It was a beginning, a small one, but a beginning nonetheless. Over the next few weeks, Chike changed. He started volunteering at a homeless shelter. He used his business skills to help, not showing off, but genuinely working. He cleaned toilets, served food, listened to people's stories, and slowly he began to understand. Poverty wasn't a moral failing. It was circumstance, bad luck, illness, betrayal. Any of these things could happen to anyone, including him. He brought his family to volunteer with him. His wife and children at first complained, but gradually they too began to change, to see, to understand. Chief Emeka watched from a distance, his health declining, but his heart healing. One son had learned. But what about the others? Ngozi and Obiora hadn't visited since the will announcement. They'd made it clear where they stood. With money, not with family. Then something unexpected happened. Chief Emeka collapsed one day and was rushed to the hospital. The cancer was spreading faster than expected. The doctors gave him weeks, maybe days. Arinze called all 3 children. Chike came immediately. He held his father's hand and wept. "I'm not ready to lose you, Papa. You've taught me so much. I wish I'd learned earlier." "I'm proud of the man you're becoming," Chief Emeka whispered weakly. "That's enough for me." Ngozi and Obiora arrived hours later. They stood at the hospital room door, awkward and uncertain. Chief Emeka looked at them. Even now, sick and dying, he hoped they'd show him something real. "Come in," he said softly. They approached slowly. "Papa," Ngozi said, her voice small. "We've been thinking about everything you said, about who we are. And we're sorry," she said, tears falling. But Chief Emeka could see it in their eyes. They weren't sorry for who they were sorry he was dying before they could change his mind about the will. "I know what you're thinking," Chief Emeka said. "Even now you're calculating, wondering if there's still time to get back into my good graces, to save your inheritance." "Papa, please," Obiora began. But Chief Emeka cut him off. Don't lie to a dying man. I've seen who you are. And unless you truly change, like Chike is changing, you'll stay that way, empty." Ngozi and Obiora looked at each other, then at Chike, who stood beside their father with genuine grief on his face. What made him different? Why could he change when they couldn't? Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was just too late for them. They left the hospital room without another word. Chief Emeka never saw them again. Chief Emeka survived another 3 weeks. In that time, Chike never left his side. They talked about everything: life, regrets, hopes. Chike told his father about the homeless shelter, about the people he was helping. "I met a man there, Papa," Chike said. "He used to be a businessman. Lost everything in a fraud scheme. His family abandoned him. He ended up on the streets." "It could have been you," Chief Emeka said. "It could have been me," Chike agreed. "And Papa, if it had been you, really you, I would have kicked you. I would have walked past my own father dying on the street and not known it, because I'd trained myself not to see poor people, not to see their humanity." Chief Emeka squeezed his son's hand weakly. "But you see now. That's what matters. You see now." On his last day, Chief Emeka called his lawyer. He changed his will one final time. Most of his wealth still went to charity. But he left a substantial amount to Chike, not as a reward, but as a tool. "Use this to help others," he told his son. "Build businesses that employ people fairly. Create programs that lift people up. Be the man I should have been." "I will, Papa," Chike promised. "I swear I will." "What about Ngozi and Obiora?" the lawyer asked. Chief Emeka sighed. "Give them each a small trust, enough to live comfortably, but not lavishly. and tell them this is my final gift, not money, but an opportunity to learn what I learned, that you can have all the wealth in the world and still be poor where it matters, in your heart." The lawyer wrote everything down. Then Chief Emeka closed his eyes, tired. "Is there anything else, sir?" "Just one thing," Chief Emeka whispered. "Tell everyone who knew me that the richest man in the country died a beggar, and the beggar died the richest man I ever met." That night, Chief Emeka Okafor passed away peacefully, with Chike holding his hand. The funeral was massive. Hundreds of people came: business associates, politicians, society people, all dressed in expensive black, crying crocodile tears. But at the back of the church, a group of people stood quietly. The street sweeper who'd shared her bread, the old woman who'd brought him soup, the beggars he'd met during his 3 weeks on the street. They didn't have fancy clothes. They didn't belong in that grand church. But they came anyway, to honor a man who'd seen them as human, who treated them with dignity even when he had nothing. Chike saw them and invited them to sit in the front row. This shocked everyone. "Who are these people?" the whispers started. Chike stood at the pulpit to give the eulogy. He looked out at the crowd of wealthy, important people. Then he looked at the poor people in the front row. "My father," he began, "was a billionaire. But he died realizing that money means nothing if you have no compassion. In his final months, he disguised himself as a beggar to test his family, to see if we loved him or his wealth." The crowd gasped. Murmurs spread. Chike continued, his voice strong. "I failed that test. I kicked my own father when he asked for help, because I didn't recognize him, because he was poor, and I'd learned to be blind to poor people, to see them as less than human." The church was silent now, everyone listening. "But my father's test wasn't just for us, his family. It was for all of you, everyone in this room. How do you treat people who have nothing? Do you see them? Do you help them? Or do you step over them like they're garbage?"
Chike pointed to the poor people in the front row. "These people showed my father more kindness in 3 weeks than we showed him in a lifetime. They shared their food when they were hungry. They helped him when he fell. They treated him with dignity when he had nothing. They are the true rich people. We," he gestured to all the wealthy mourners, "are the beggars. We beg for status, for respect, for validation. We hoard our wealth and call it success. But we're empty inside. My father knew that, and he tried to teach us before he died." The church was so quiet you could hear breathing. Some people looked ashamed, others angry, but everyone was listening. Chike finished. "My father left most of his wealth to charity, to help the poor we've all ignored. Some of you will call that foolish, but I call it the wisest thing he ever did. Because true wealth isn't what you have, it's what you give." After the funeral, Ngozi and Obiora confronted Chike. "How could you say those things?" Ngozi hissed. "You embarrassed the family." "The family was already embarrassed," Chike said calmly. "Papa just revealed it." "What about the will?" Obiora demanded. "Are you really going to let him give away our inheritance?" "It was never our inheritance," Chike said. "We didn't earn it. Papa did, and he chose to give it to people who need it more than we do." His siblings stared at him like he'd gone crazy. "You've changed," Ngozi said with disgust. "You've become weak." "No," Chike said. "I've become human. There's a difference." He walked away from them and never looked back. Over the next few months, Ngozi and Obiora struggled. Without their father's wealth, they had to live on what they'd saved and their trust funds. It wasn't poverty, but it wasn't the lavish lifestyle they were used to. Ngozi had to sell her expensive apartment and move somewhere smaller. She had to cut back on shopping, on travel, on all the luxuries she'd taken for granted. At first, she was bitter and angry.
"This is all Papa's fault," she would say. "He ruined our lives with his test." But slowly, something shifted. Without money to impress people, she discovered who her real friends were. Most disappeared, but a few stayed. And those few taught her something about real relationships, about being valued for who you are, not what you have. One day she volunteered at a women's shelter, inspired by something Chike had said. She met women with nothing who were rebuilding their lives with courage and dignity. Women who reminded her of the person she used to be before money made her cold. She started to cry. "I've wasted my whole life," she told the shelter director. "It's not too late," the director said kindly. "It's never too late to change." Obiora had a harder journey. He couldn't let go of his pride. He borrowed money from friends to maintain his lifestyle, going deeper into debt. He tried to contest the will in court, but lost. The judge ruled that Chief Emeka had been of sound mind and had every right to leave his money wherever he chose. Obiora hit rock bottom when he couldn't pay his rent and was evicted. He found himself on the street with 2 suitcases, everything else repossessed. For the first time in his life, he understood what poverty felt like: the fear, the shame, the invisibility. He walked past people who'd once called him friend, and they pretended not to see him. He sat on a bench in the park, defeated and broken. An old man sat beside him and offered him half a sandwich. "You look hungry, son." Obiora looked at the man. He was clearly poor, probably homeless, but he was sharing his food. "Why?" Obiora asked. The man smiled. "Because I know what it's like to be hungry and alone, and because we're supposed to help each other. That's what makes us human."
Obiora broke down crying. The old man patted his back gently. "It's okay to fall, son. The important thing is getting back up." Obiora eventually called Chike, swallowing his pride. "I need help," he admitted. "Not money. I need to learn what you learned. How to be better." Chike came and picked him up. He took Obiora to the homeless shelter where he volunteered. "This is where you start," Chike said. "By helping others, by seeing people, by learning that your worth isn't in your bank account." Obiora worked at the shelter for months. It was hard, humbling. But slowly he began to heal, to understand, to become the person his father had hoped he'd be. One evening, as he served food to a long line of homeless people, he saw his reflection in the serving window. He looked different, tired but peaceful, poor but rich where it mattered, in his heart. "Thank you, Papa," he whispered to the sky. "I finally understand." 2 years after Chief Emeka's death, Chike organized a memorial event, not at a fancy hotel, but at the homeless shelter. He invited everyone, rich and poor alike. Ngozi came, dressed simply now, no designer labels. She'd been working at the women's shelter and had found purpose she never knew existed. Obiora came too, thinner and humbler, working as a counselor, helping people rebuild their lives after financial collapse. The 3 siblings stood together, so different from who they'd been. "We failed him," Ngozi said quietly. "For most of our lives, we failed him. But he gave us a chance to change," Chike said. "Even at the end, even when it cost him everything. That was his final gift." The memorial began. The poor people Papa had met during his 3 weeks as a beggar came forward to share their stories. The street sweeper spoke. "That old man shared his last coins with me," she said. "He didn't have to, but he did, because he understood struggle." The old woman who'd brought soup spoke next. "He was sick and dying, but he still said thank you. Still treated me with respect. Rich people never do that. They take and never see us. But he saw me." One by one they shared stories of the beggar who'd been kind, who'd listened, who'd treated them like humans. And as Chike listened, he realized his father had taught them all a final lesson. That the measure of a person isn't what they have, but how they treat those who have nothing. After the memorial, Chike stood before the crowd. "My father tested us because he loved us," he said. "He wanted us to be better, to learn before it was too late." Some of us learned, some took longer. But all of us were changed by a billionaire who became a beggar to save his children's souls. He paused, emotion thick in his voice. Papa, if you can hear us, we want you to know. We finally understand. Money doesn't make you rich. Compassion does. Kindness does. Love does. The crowd applauded, rich and poor standing together. The barriers between them, at least for that moment, dissolved. As people mingled and shared food, Chike watched and smiled. His father's legacy wasn't the buildings with his name on them or the businesses he'd built. It was this: people learning to see each other, to help each other, to be human together. That evening, Chike visited his father's grave. He brought flowers and sat on the ground beside the headstone. "I kept my promise, Papa," he said. "I'm using the money to help people. We've built 3 schools in poor communities, a hospital that treats people for free, housing for homeless families. And I'm not doing it for recognition or praise. I'm doing it because it's right. Because you taught me, finally, what matters." He touched the cold stone. Ngozi is helping women escape abuse. Obiora is helping people rebuild from bankruptcy. We're not perfect. We still struggle. But we're trying. Every day, we're trying to be the children you deserved.
As Chike stood to leave, an old beggar approached the grave. He stood beside Chike, looking at the headstone. "Did you know him?" Chike asked. The beggar nodded. "He sat with me one night, shared his bread, told me about his children. Said he was worried they'd lost their way, but he believed they'd find it again. Said love sometimes has to be tough to be real." Chike's eyes filled with tears. "That sounds like him." The beggar smiled. He was a good man. Rich or poor, didn't matter. He had a good heart. That's the only wealth that lasts. The beggar walked away into the evening. Chike watched him go, then looked back at his father's grave one last time. "You won, Papa," he whispered. "Your test worked. We're better now. Not perfect, but better. And we'll keep trying. For you, for ourselves, for all the people you taught us to see." Years later, people still told the story of Chief Emeka Okafor, the billionaire who disguised himself as a beggar. Some called it madness, others called it genius. But those who understood called it love, a father's desperate attempt to save his children from themselves, to teach them that true wealth isn't measured in money, but in character, in compassion, in the ability to see the humanity in everyone regardless of their circumstances. And the lesson lived on through his children, who spent the rest of their lives proving they'd learned it. Chike's foundation grew, helping thousands. Ngozi's shelter saved countless women. Obiora's program gave people second chances. The Okafor name became associated not with wealth and power, but with service and kindness. The greatest inheritance Chief Emeka had left wasn't money. It was transformation. And in the end, that proved to be worth more than all the billions he'd ever made.
Moral lesson. True wealth is not measured in your bank account, but in your character. How you treat people who can do nothing for you reveals who you really are. Money can be lost, status can fade, but the kindness you show to others echoes forever. The poor often have more humanity than the rich because they understand suffering. Don't let wealth blind you to what truly matters: love, compassion, and seeing the divine in every human being. Reflection questions. How do you treat people who can offer you nothing in return? If you lost everything tomorrow, who would still love you? What will your legacy be? What you accumulated, or how you treated people? Are you raising your children to value character or just success? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and turn on the bell notification to be the first to be notified when we post a new story. Remember,
Be kind to everyone you meet, for you never know who might be testing you. And more importantly, be kind simply because it's the right thing to do. Love you all.